Gentleman from the 81st.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wasn't sure whether I wanted to speak today or not. And as I considered that, sometimes songs go through my head. And what went through my head was this. Que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. And you know the rest of it. So why that song? I'll tell you why that song. Because I watched the governor present a budget, and even before he presented it, I watched our gentleman from the 63rd tell him what he could and could not put in his budget. That's a heck of a way to negotiate a budget and to start being bipartisan. And so I'm thinking, whatever will be, will be. And then I watched Joint Finance Committee throw it all out. And okay, well, maybe they'll listen to one Democratic suggestion. And so I listened to Joint Finance very carefully. Not a one. And yet, gentlemen from the 63rd and many of you want me to vote for this budget and make it a bipartisan budget. But there's nothing bipartisan about it and its formation from what I saw. And so, whatever will be, will be. The future's not ours to see. I don't think we're seeing the future clearly. I don't even think we're seeing the past clearly. Let's talk about education for just a second. There was reference earlier about Act 10 and what a great thing that was. And when we enacted Act 10, we were second in the nation in test scores. And I've watched for these 10 years, as what happened to our scores. And they continue to go down. And I'm wondering where all this fantastic turnaround that you're saying and how great this is going to be, where that is. I think we can see the future. It's here. Unless we start funding it. And then, I've been listening here a little bit, and we talked about why we shouldn't take the money for Medicaid expansion. And how important that was not to do that, because our grandchildren were going to have to pay for it. And yet our schools, they accepted some money from the federal government, but we're going to penalize them because they took it. Maybe because our grandchildren have to pay for that. Well, I have news for those of you across the aisle and you, Mr. Speaker. You know what? Our grandchildren are paying for it, whether we take it or not. Because our grandchildren are still going to have to pay for what those other 30, 40, 50 states are taking that we're not. They're still going to have to pay for it, but we didn't get the advantage of it to grow our economy. I heard talk of Tommy Thompson and how wonderful he was, and yet we totally ignored his higher education budget. I'm thinking, wow, the future's not ours to see, but it seems a little clearer to me. And finally, I don't want to take a lot of your time up, but one of the objections to some of our amendments earlier was this continued refrain that it's in the budget. I kind of heard that from the last speaker as well. The glass is half full. It's in the budget. I would suggest to you that yes, it is in the budget. Let's talk about ways it's in the budget really clearly. So, we had for one of my private things that I really like, that I think are going to be really good for farmers, we had $1 million going into a grant program for meat processing. What did we get? 20%. That's not half full. Sorry, your math is off. I heard bragging that we were doing really good because the Knowles Nelson Stewardship Fund was being funded. Yeah. For 2 years. That's awesome. That's not 10 years. 20%. That's not half full. And I could give you a whole lot more examples of that when we had a chance to do something. When, we could have crafted a really good bipartisan budget. But I never heard those of you across the aisle really give us a serious chance to affect what that budget said. The feeling that I and my district and my schools had was, take it or leave it. Que sera, sera.